Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm talking about Custom Iaito from Nine Circles Limited. This is a budogu company based in the UK and they cater to kendoka, iaidoka and aikidoka. This particular model of Iaito is the Nosyudo Tokujo, and this is the slightly more expensive option on their site currently, but it's the option that's customizable. So there is a cheaper option, which it just comes in standard configurations with a couple of basic options as far as finishes and things like that are concerned. But this one is fully customizable, and you'll see component by component what you can change here. So for myself, the story behind this blade is basically my wife conspired with my Iaido sensei and my Kendo dojo leader. And so my partner in crime running the dojo here in Northern Ireland. I look after things here while he's in England. Yeah, basically they conspired together. They'd my wife knew I'd been looking at swords. I'd been looking at Iaito and Shinken and kind of weighing up what I could afford. But really, it was just a case of I was interested in buying a sword originally. Anyway, she'd observed this, and fast forward a while later, and we were getting close to our wedding, and I'd started kicking the idea around of maybe starting Iaido. And there was another chap in the dojo who was also thinking that. And he'd had some previous experience with the idol. And so we were deciding, yeah, we'd probably start together. And that gave my wife the perfect excuse to buy me a sword for my wedding present. So that's how this transpired. And she was very, very clever. She hacked my BKA account to get my insurance details and worked very closely with my EI sensei to get some measurements, which I thought was just for some clothes or something she was planning to buy, because she does that periodically. Oh, do you need a new jumper? Oh, let me just check your arm measurements, that sort of thing. So I didn't think anything of it. And anyway, so they went through the options, and my EI sensei, made any changes that he thought needed to be made for the balance of the weapon because I didn't know any better. So for example, I think I would have ended up with a blade that was a bit too long and probably a scar that was a bit too long as well, had it been left the way it was in the basket. But many of the aesthetic features are the same or similar, with just some minor changes. So I'll go through the parts one by one here. Basically, I went for a standard blade design or blade configuration, so I opted not to get a decorative hamon. And this was advised by my sensei because the way hamon work on a shinken, obviously that's a forged blade, and that's part of the tempering process. And so it's basically a permanent feature on the blade. I don't think they don't sort of scratch and wear off easily. Whereas it's more of a decorative pattern added to the top surface of a Iaito, and that surface takes a bit of a beating when it's released from the saya repetitively during training. So my understanding is that can wear off, and it doesn't necessarily look the best when it's half worn off. So that's why they opted to leave it off, although, it's your personal preference at the end of the day. I went for, I believe my blade length is 2.25 shaku from memory, but I could be wrong, but I think it was adjusted down from a slightly longer length, and which I think when I originally measured it, I based it on, roughly on what I could do with a shinai or something like that, and my Iaido sensei was like, don't be silly. Yeah, so the scar length was shortened to 24.2 centimeters, I believe, to make sense with my blade length of 2.25 shaku. Anyway, moving on. I went for the HM02 Sugura, which is the sort of the way that the tip of the blade is finished, essentially. I went for the standard brass habaki. Now you can go basically, you can choose to go kind of all brass, or you can go all silver on some of the parts, like the habaki and the fuchikashira and so on and so forth. The silver, I believe, costs extra. I don't think it requires maintenance in terms of how it tarnishes like the brass does. And I think my wife was like, she had a specific budget, a max budget. So she went for the brass, which is okay because I actually kind of prefer the brass myself anyway, just from a visual aesthetic. But it does take a bit more looking after, a little bit more like TLC to keep it looking its best. And because I train with it, it doesn't always look its best. It does get tarnished, but you just clean it up from time to time. So yeah, I went for the brass Fuchikashira with the Tora, the tiger design on it, and the same for the Menuki as well. There's a range of suba that you can choose from, and I went for one that I don't have the model number to hand, but effectively I just picked one. They didn't have tigers, I don't think, so I just picked a dragon, and that was fine. And then I went for the Custom Iaito, which is the wrap that goes around that scar. And I went for that. Well, I didn't go for that. Let's say it was picked for me. My Iaito sensei recommended it because you have to pay, I believe, quite a lot extra for the silk. And the leather, which is the other option, based on his recommendation, the leather gunks up really badly, from your kind of sweat and skin rubbing on it. And his suggestion was you don't want to go for one of those because it deteriorate quite quickly, and they're not the best for practice in terms of gripping. You probably get on better with cotton if you're not going for the silk. So they picked cotton. So that's one of the factors I believe that kept the price down, but it was also one of the factors that was changed for practical purposes. So something to bear in mind if you're picking your own. I also went for, let's see what else. I went for white same underneath the grip, so I've got the brown cotton and the white same. And the saya, I went for the sort of, it's like a brushed gold one. It's SY19. Yeah, SY19, which is like a circular brushed design. And that actually costs an extra £175 to change that from, say, like just a plain standard black. And then I just had a synthetic horn at the end of that. You can have a brass horn, I believe, at the end of that. But we just went, my wife just went with a standard synthetic version. Okay, so all in, what are we looking at? We had it at £666.67 ex VAT. And then you can expect it if you're in the UK, for like UK Parcel Force, once it arrives, that's not too much extra. It's about £7 or something like that for shipping. And then there's 20% of VAT to go on that as well. So all in, you're looking at £808 or so today to get one of these in the same spec. Obviously, if you're in a different territory, you'll need to just pop into the basket and work it out, how much it's going to cost you. But yeah, interesting to note that if you change the saya to a more basic saya, you can basically, ex VAT, you can pick up a customized Iaito for between £400 and £500, which is really not a lot at all. Now, in terms of the sword itself and how it handles, the first time I took it out, obviously, I didn't really know what I was doing with it. I still had to be trained to use it somewhat. And my EI sensei had come over to run a seminar just to teach us the sete forms, all of them, and give us some ideas of like the really critical points on them. They left us with some video footage of things that we could constantly refer to, because we're going to have to leave us to try and grow Iaido in Northern Ireland with very few visits and limited communication. It was really up to myself and another guy in my dojo to get things started and up and running. And in any case, they brought an Iaito to leave with the club, and I guess it's kind of a spare that was knocking around from their, from the dojo in Newcastle. And that was considerably heavier and a bit clunkier, and they were having to use that to teach and demonstrate with. And obviously, I brought my sword along, and so everyone has to have a go, with a new sword for the first time. And so they tried it out, and they seem immediately impressed by the balance. And having tried the sword that they were using for demonstrations since then, to have something to compare it to, and having tried my friend's Iaito as well. So I've got a couple of planes of reference, and I've used a Shinken before as well, briefly back in South Africa, back in the early 2000s. That was probably about, I would say, maybe a 2.5 grams worth of Shinken. But back then, anyway, at least that's what they told me. They said it was 40,000 rand it cost them, but I don't know, who's to say. I don't see any reason they would have lied. But anyway, based on that, I mean, it is really nicely weighted. The weight is surprisingly over towards its ska, more so than I thought it would be. Based on, like, when I held the Shinken, the weight was definitely further forward, and it felt like holding, a stick with bricks tied to the end of it. By comparison, really pulled your wrists up. This doesn't really do that. Obviously, it's heavier than like a Bokto or Shinai or anything like that, considerably, but it's not like out of the realms of scope of comparison with a thick Bokto or something like that. It's just a little bit heavier, but I'm surprised by how much the balance is over towards the ska. In terms of how it's held up, I've repaired the saya 3 times. I practice 3 times a week generally, two or 3 times a week. But two of the practice sessions are usually a bit shorter, maybe half an hour each, and then one of them on the every second Saturday is a full hour. But I try and make good use of my time, so I don't dawdle. I keep busy, and yeah. So I've had to repair the mouth of the saya a couple of times. Nothing serious. It's not cracked or anything like that. It's just wear and tear. It's just because I need the sword to sit in snug, just so it doesn't just fall out, without encouragement. I'd like to, have it so that my thumb has to push it forward and remove it from the, sort of unlock it from the saya before it'll release, ideally. Although you should always, have your thumb on there pretty much at all times anyway, just for safety. But aside from that, it hasn't really taken any damage. I mean, you will need to get like alderwood to repair the mouth of the saya, and I haven't always had access to that. And sometimes I have, like, it took me 2 goes to learn how to file it and get a smooth finish. So I do have some light scratching around the monuchi, where the last point of contact where the monuchi releases from the saya, during your kata. But it's very light and very incidental. It's not anything that sort of spoils the blade as such. The brass takes a bit of a beating in terms of tarnishing, particularly the habaki. So that needs cleaned up, and you need to be careful that you don't get like brasso or something like that onto the blade, because it's aluminium blade, and it's then coated, which gives it this sort of nice steel, forged steel like look and shine. And you have to be careful because it scratches easily. So if you ever seen those powdered balls that you use to like tap onto the blade to clean a forged blade, you don't use those on the Iaito. You just use a microfiber cloth with like a bit of sword oil, and that's enough to take the finger grease off the blade, or any little bits of dust or whatever that might be on there. But if you're cleaning the brass components, you need to be very careful not to get brass or anything like that onto the blade, because it will damage it. But aside from that, yeah, the sword has been really good. It's really rewarding to use it. It really encourages, throwing the blade nice and far forward. And I actually have the sword in my hand while I'm talking about it, just so I can kind of feel it and talk honestly about it rather than just from memory. And it encourages a really nice far forward cut, really correct hasuji, the balance, and the grooves along the side of the blade. Everything seems to be really true with that. When you really climb into it and analyze where your cut should be at, and it's my fingers fit perfectly into it. So if you do kendo, you're used to having your left finger right at the end of the shinai, and you often get away with having it at the end of the bakuto, even though that's incorrect. Whereas with a real sword, it sits in, like a good sort of inch in from the edge, and there's little diamonds for you to place your fingers in, and it took a bit of getting used to because of my kendo background at first, but now that I'm used to it, it really feels like home, and it makes a lot of sense, and I'm very, very happy with it overall, and I guess I'll leave it there, which is to say that this is an incredibly good, high quality weapon for training all the time. It's been really robust. It hasn't gone wrong at all since I got it. And I think it's incredibly good value for money as well. And also the ordering process from Nine Circles has been very good. There were some delays getting it. I think it was ordered roughly 3 months before our wedding, with hopes that it would show up in time for the wedding. That didn't happen. I think it was delayed by about 2 months after that. So my friend presented me with his sword as a ceremonial gesture on the day, and then this arrived a couple of months later. But Nine Circles were really good with their communication, staying in touch with my wife, and actually my Iaito sensei primarily as the contact. Just keeping them in touch and up to date, and their service was very good, and they're very honest with things that were going on. Obviously, it's not so simple to ship these around the world. Certain insurance things that have to be done, before you start shipping swords that are quite dangerous in the wrong hands around the globe. You can get delays and things like that, but it's worth it when they arrive. It's definitely worth it. So I'm incredibly happy with it. They've done a stellar job with it, and like I said, this one cost me, well, I don't know the true cost of what my wife paid, but reverse engineering it into the current basket, it's around £810 to get this today. But like I said, if you go for a more basic saya, something like that, you can very much easily bring that down by almost £200. So you could be walking away all in for a customized Iaito for around sort of £600 or £650, something like that, which isn't a bad deal if you ask me in my books. So I'm going to leave it there. Fantastic weapon, highly recommend it. If you're looking to start Iaito, or you've done it a little while and now you're taking it seriously and you want to get your first Iaito, or maybe you just want to get a something a little bit more prestige than some of the more basic models available out there, this is a very good choice. Until next time, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Take care, and I'll see you soon.